And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com, brought to you in part by Yahoo Sports. Check out their DFS offerings over at Yahoo Sports. Go to their sports tab and fantasy sports and go to DFS. Check out what they have going on. Completely different pricing over there, so you can get a different vantage point on daily fantasy. Dave, we have a 9-game MLB slate ahead of us on Monday. How the hell are you doing?
I decided to forego watching Game of Thrones in an effort to watch the end of that Denver Blazers game, which was very good, by the way. It'd been a phenomenal series. Surprising win by Denver. Can you imagine if someone DVR'd the Denver game, though, and was like, oh, dude, you spoiled it for me, right?
I would suggest they have bigger fish to fry that they're DVRing till the next morning, but
I haven't been on Twitter since. And well, I have, but I just haven't looked at anyone else's stuff. I just think it's funny that you can do it with TV shows, but not with sports games. You know, you can live tweet a sports game, but you're an asshole if you do it with a TV show.
And we can get to break down momentarily. Here's my whole thing.
And I'm going to watch it the moment we get done the show.
Right. Here's my whole thing. I mean, everyone dies in this episode. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to spoil it for you, but
all right.
they don't really. Here's my thing about spoilers on Twitter. If you are at work and you know people at the water cooler are talking about Game of Thrones, you're working in a corporate office. Do you go to the water cooler and say, "Hey guys, don't talk about this. I'm here now," or do you avoid the water cooler? You don't go to the water cooler. So do not log on. Don't do it.
I think most of the
it's asinine. It's asinine.
I think most of the world's starting to understand this, and I can tell you why. You know what getting ratioed is, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I've never had the fun of being ratioed because I don't get enough interactions with my tweets to be ratioed.
Well, if you're unfamiliar with the phrase, just go to Eric Swalwell's Twitter. I had to. I'm sorry. So
I don't even know. Did he did something?
No, it's just every day. Don't worry, we don't get political.
Dave and I do, just not on here.
Not on this show. And when we do, we talk shit on everybody. So relax.
True story.
If you go and you look at any tweet that like quote unquote spoils it or talks about Game of Thrones, like last week, right? I did some cursory research, not intentional, but I just noticed this. It was an observation that people that would be like, dude, what the F? Spoilers. They get no positive interaction, maybe like one like.
No.
And then 15 comments that are like, why are you on Twitter, right? And that happened time and time again. So most people understand that it's your fault if you're on Twitter.
You're making the choice. Yep.
That's all I have to say. And it's the last time I'll talk about it. But Game of Thrones has brought this up in me because it's the most popular show in the world. And people are upset that you talk about the most popular show in the world on one of the most popular social media platforms in the world.
Well, it's the same with Endgame, which I still haven't seen. I've avoided spoilers for the most part.
I take a slightly different approach for movies, I will be honest.
Which is fine. And I like on the other side of it, I'm not running to Twitter to post spoilers. So I think there is a common human decency of not being a jerk by happenstance. But if you know people are talking about something, you don't go there. So just lay off. Lay off Twitter, lay off Facebook. If you're choosing not to watch it live or close to live, then that's on you.
Right. I think with movies, though, like,
it's a week. I think a week is reasonable.
Yeah. Like, I'll talk about Game of Thrones on Twitter as soon as it happens. I wait 5 minutes because I skip through the credits when I watch, which means I'm ahead of some people.
Sure.
Right. Because, through Prime.
Oh, the credits are changing every week now. Things are happening in there. You're getting some things in what I don't want to.
I mean, I'm not a dumb guy, but I'm also not. I'm not sharp enough to put my finger on that either. So,
uh,
with movies, I think I'm a little bit different.
I don't know why, but you
You
saying
can't
that
just
just
watch it in your bedroom or,
right.
in your basement that night. So, whatever,
You
that's all.
saying I'm not a dumb guy for some reason, I don't know why, to be honest, reminded me of Finkelstein. I don't know what it was the way you
Well,
said
I'm
it.
saying I'm not the dumbest guy, but I'm also not the smartest guy.
Oh, man. Oh, Fink, I miss you. I know you don't listen anymore, but
I miss you too.
all right. Let's get to this slate. And on Sunday, Dave, we had a slate of Major League Baseball games with pitching that left a lot to be desired, a lot of things up in the air. You had some good performances when all was said and done. Zach Davies had a very good outing and is now, I think, 4-0 with a 1 point something ERA. Regression will be here soon, but still has been a great run for him to start the year. On Monday, we have some great starting pitching and some pitchers who have maybe not lived up to the hype that we saw to begin the year, namely Max Scherzer and Walker Buehler. Now, Buehler has an ERA, and again, talking sort of more in the season-long aspect, but he's still been disappointing from a daily fantasy perspective. And Max Scherzer. Scherzer has been somebody that obviously has gigantic upside. He has 62 strikeouts on the year. He is putting up a floor that is somewhat reliable, but he struggled and now faces a Milwaukee team in Milwaukee at 10K, where price point, name recognition, you'd say, absolutely sign me up. But I think there's at least somewhat of a hesitation here. Top end, we have Cole, DeGrom, Scherzer, Snell, Buehler, Paddock. Then we have Hamels. Let's start there. Hamels clearly against Miami has some upside. What do you like here? Are there names that stand out? Are you concerned about Scherzer? Are you concerned about Buehler enough to stay away with their price points down on the year?
Dude, there's a lot of pitching, right?
Yep.
There's a
Lots of pitchers, lots of hitters.
So we don't have a total yet for Miami or Chicago. It's in Chicago. It's at Wrigley. We don't get them the night before. We don't have one for Baltimore or Boston. And actually, no, I'm sorry. Do we just not have one for Baltimore? I think we do have one for Boston, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm looking now. No, we don't have one for either. And then we don't have one for Arizona or Tampa Bay yet. Just those are the ones we don't have them for. Okay. That said, we do have one for the Kansas City Royals against Garrett Cole. It is 2.8. He is a 277 money line favorite.
Yep.
Okay. Jacob deGrom against San Diego, 3.1. 3.4 for the Braves against Walker Buehler. 3.4 for the Mets against Chris Paddock. 3.7 for Milwaukee. 3.9 for Washington against Ulysses Chassin. That is more product of Washington's beat-up offense than it is Chassin, especially
Absolutely.
in Milwaukee. Point being, though, is once we get the line for Miami, we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams below 4, right? And actually, no, that will be 8 because Arizona should also be below 4, well below 4 against Blake Snell. That's on a 9-game slate, dude.
Yes, sir.
Right? So Cole, DeGrom, Scherzer, Snell, Buehler, Paddock, Hamels, and I'm missing one. Oh, Chassin. It's a lot. So, yeah, I think Garrett Cole is my favorite target here. I really like Garrett Cole. He's been brilliant. Outside of one bad start that came in Texas. I remember someone asked me on Twitter, what's wrong with him? Nothing. It's Texas. They're power-laden lefties at a good park. It was hot. Guy's fantastic. And I would expect him to put up monster numbers again today. And he is my top option. Also, DraftKings, oddly enough, the pricing was really wild earlier in the year and still on hitters. Some of it is. But pitching, it seems like they're trying to balance things out, like counteract the hitter pricing with pitchers, because Garrett Cole would be 12K in this spot last year.
What's interesting is they're sort of shrinking the pitching price point. So you're getting
it's more compressed.
Mid-tier pitchers are slightly priced up, and the best pitchers are slightly priced down. So you're getting that in between where it's, I think, a harder decision to make. I don't know if I'm enjoying it more, but I do think there are more decisions to be made over the past couple of weeks than there were early on in the season.
Sure. And look, I think ownership plays heavily here, and this is one of the reasons. Like Max Scherzer's 10K flat.
Yep.
He hasn't been great, but I'm really not even remotely worried about him. His K rate is perfectly fine. He's missing the same amount of bats. I'm not worried about this. What I find interesting, though, is you're talking about a Milwaukee team that got Yelich back. He promptly homered at home, where he has 14 of his 15 long balls this season.
He's good at baseball.
Yeah, he's pretty decent. But also, this is a team that will strike out a decent amount against righties. If Scherzer is not as popular as he should be, I'll be on board, right? They're striking out at the 5th highest clip against righties this year. So they have a lot of power. But Scherzer could also go in there and strike out 13, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Right.
$10,000 is really enticing. So is Garrett Cole. So is Jacob deGrom against the San Diego Padres. They are a night and day team against lefties and righties, right? This season. And by the way, a lot of these teams are approaching 1,000 plate appearances. We're starting to get a nice little sample. I'm okay using it now. They're striking out the 4th most against righties.
26.2%. Yep.
Yep. Not only that, but they are walking at the lowest clip in baseball. I'm sure you know this, but Jacob deGrom is not exactly one to walk a lot of batters. It just does an excellent job of limiting walks. This year, quite a bit worse than last year, but I expect that to come down. Last year's 5.5%, 2016, 6%, 15 was 5.1%. He's going to come back down there. He was also pitching injured for a little while there. So just at the top alone, Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom, phenomenal options. And then Max Scherzer, because of Cole, because of deGrom, I think that he might be the one here that sees his ownership suffer. Or in our case, it's an opportunity. Milwaukee still strikes out a lot. And, these are all teams that have some Ks in their lineups, specifically the Padres and the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, granted, one of these teams is a lot more dangerous than all of the others. That is the Brewers. One of these parks is a lot worse for pitchers than others. Right. That's the Brewers. But that's also why Scherzer could have lower ownership. So that's where I'm at on the 10K guys. I guess we can take a look at some of these. We could probably go by 10K, then 9K, because you have, 4 of them on DraftKings and several worth talking about.
Yeah, Cole Hamels stands out, obviously, against the Miami Marlins. You made mention we don't get that spread quite yet until typically the day of. Just weather and the wind blowing out can make a huge difference there in Chicago. I think you nailed it with Scherzer. It's just a simple fact of the price point and the park. Sorry, the price point is a positive and ownership may be a positive. The park and the opponent are negatives, but he's still Max Scherzer. So if you're getting him at single-digit ownership on this slate, that makes such a huge difference in what the upside can be.
Dude, he has a 33% K rate,
right,
a 3.7% walk rate, and a 377 BABIP. That's going to come down.
Yeah, all the numbers look good. Like all of them.
216 FIP.
Yeah. All of them. And that's why on a day like this, and you're dealing with a typical baseball fan logging in and playing on DraftKings, they look at an ERA and they look at the opponent and they say, no, thank you. But all the peripheral stats, all of the advanced metrics show that Scherzer is just fine. So if this is single digit ownership, I'm right there with you against Milwaukee. And yeah, you could talk about stacking the Brewers too, and Yelich and lefty power against Scherzer, but he stood out at 10K. I think DraftKings is specifically, shrinking your player pool a little bit, intentionally trying to jam in pitchers between like 11K and 8K. So let's do that. Let's go 10K and below to 8K. So that's taking Snell, Buehler, Paddock, and Hamels first as our next grouping. And then I think we sort of run out of potential plays going through the next 4, and then we get into pitchers we're going to stack against. But Snell against Arizona has obvious upside in the Trop, which is clearly a pitcher's park. Buehler, I have questions on. I don't know that he's quite right now, and the pitches that he's relied on in the past. I know you talked extensively last year about the four-seamer and how much you could trust what we were getting from the results from Buehler and what could be, what his future was. Paddock has been dynamic, and you have some upside against the Mets. And then Hamels seems like a bit of a chalk play here, where we may see ownership up in the 20% range against the Marlins, even in Wrigley, even if the wind were to be blowing out. What's your take on the 9K range?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Paddock very seldom uses his third pitch. He's a 2-pitch guy, 4-seam changeup, and the changeup's really good. There's no denying that, right? The whiff rate's almost 20%. He gets a decent amount of swings and misses on his four-seamer as well. But, all in all, both the four-seamer, the changeup, and the curve have done a good job. He's done a good job of not really allowing power on any of them. The curve has allowed a higher batting average, but really all three of these pitches, when used, even if it's a two-pitch mix, once in a while, 10% of the time he throws the curveball, they all get good results. He's allowed 2 home runs this season. They both came in the same game against Cincinnati. That is it across 33 innings. So really solid job there. He's striking out more than a batter per inning. But I guess the question here is, how do you get to him when you've got Cole,
Right.
you have DeGrom, you have Scherzer, all of whom you could argue are underpriced on DraftKings. Then you have Blake Snell against Arizona, coming off 2 really rough starts. This is something I'm going to look into in detail in the deep dive today. So I would recommend.
What was it, a broken toe or a toe injury of some sort that he derailed him a bit when he was running hot?
Yeah, it was his toe. Went on to the 10-day, but I'm going to detail this. If you're a premium subscriber and you want more information on it, instead of just taking a guess or having to do it yourself, check out the deep dive tomorrow. I'll post it around 2:30, 3 p.m. Eastern time. So I don't want to give a solidified, concrete statement on Blake Snell yet. I think we need to look more into that, and we don't have all the time in the world here. Cole Hamels, though, against Miami. Here's an interesting one. I think this is a very reasonable price tag. I also think it's crazy that Scherzer's only $1,000 more, but that speaks more to Scherzer's price tag than Hamels.
Yep.
At $9K, I don't have an issue with it. He dismantled them earlier this year. Actually, his best start of the season came against Miami in Miami. This one is going to come at Wrigley. So, doesn't really matter what team it is. We'll definitely be paying close attention to the weather. Looks as if wind will be blowing in from center field, not out to center field, at 10 miles per hour. And the temperatures at first pitch will be 50 degrees. It also looks like we could get some rain, but definitely good pitching temperatures for him. Seemingly good weather here as far as wind goes at Wrigley. I do like Hamels. Walker Buehler, I had mentioned that stuff about his fastball last year. What did I say? I remember I had pretty good reasoning for.
Well, you just talked through the four-seam metrics last year, and I remember specifically was based on the fact that his contact rates were just vastly different than anyone else in Major League Baseball. Like it just didn't make contextual sense.
Right. I'm pretty sure though that as it went on, we kept seeing more and more that dispelled all of those concerns. So I don't have any worries about Walker Buehler. Look, he's a high 90s thrower. He's sitting 97 on his fastball this year. He's touched 100. Well, actually, he hasn't this year, 99.5. Last year before he did. And he's a guy that, as we know, what's funny about him is he throws it was the fact that he was throwing the four-seamer so much at first, and then he started mixing it up. But this year he's throwing it 60% of the time. The slider is the only pitch he's throwing more than 10% of the time, and that's 16%. So he mixes the sinker in there, a little cutter, little curve. That maybe it's the slider, and they're just seeing, and it's registering as the curve or the slot. It's the slider, and it's registering as the cutter. It's very possible. But really, the thing is with Buehler, against an Atlanta team that isn't going to give you many strikeouts to begin with, I'm more than happy going elsewhere here. I don't think it's necessary to go to Buehler. This Atlanta Braves team is going to strike out at a bottom 10 clip against righties every year. They're doing it again this year. They did it last year and the year before. And while Buehler is still a pitcher that I have a lot of faith in, he also has Dave Roberts as his manager and hasn't thrown 100 pitches this season. We know that other guys in this price range can throw 100 pitches. Cole Hamels has thrown 100 pitches or more in all but 2 starts, and those were 95 and 97. So I think he's my favorite option here. Blake Snell, like I said, no ruling on him yet, but because he is so talented, because he has such immense upside on a strikeout standpoint, I could be willing to use him. I'm just not sure yet. But I know that Paddock and Buehler will probably be, as Adam likes to say, casualties of the slate.
Makes a ton of sense there in the upper, I guess the lower upper tier, not the
upper mid range,
Yeah,
lower
upper
high range.
exactly. Can contextualize it different ways. Hamels stood out to me just because of the matchup. Though I will point out that the Marlins on the year against lefties do not strike out 17.9%, but they also don't walk at 6%. They also don't hit for power at 0.084 ISO. 0.084 ISO for Marlins bats against lefty pitchers on the year. 2019 sample sizes are growing. They're still small enough. This is just 200 to 250 plate appearances for the Marlins.
Particularly versus lefties, they're still small, particularly against southpaws.
Absolutely, but still, that is a legitimate number that can cause some consternation, as it were. I would have to say Hamel stands out. I have concerns about Paddock, especially about Buehler in this spot against the Braves with Freeman and Markakis and some of these lefty power bats. I know it's in Chavez Ravine, but I'll stay away from him. Agree with you on Snell, and I think it's Scherzer, Cole, and Hamels for me, 9K and above. Who's sub 9K that stands out? We can go 9K all the way through to the bottom. Alcantara, Josh Smith down at the bottom end. Anybody stand out as another SP2 that might be worth noting here before you do your write-up on Monday?
So there's definitely nobody that I love here. Chassin is one of those guys that is better against righties. I mean, at least he has been over years of pitching. Mm-hmm. And, the lineup we got yesterday was, by the way, so swap out Anibal Sanchez for Scherzer, another righty. I don't believe Max Scherzer bats left. No, bats righty. So we had Robles, Wilmer Defoe, Adam Eaton, Kurt Suzuki, who hit 3 home runs at Citizens Bank Park last series. Brian Dozier, Andrew Stevenson, Carter Kieboom, Jake Knoll, and Anibal Sanchez. 3 lefties in that lineup. 3 of them. And none of them are all that imposing. Now, not all of them strike out that much, but if we were to just pull up the active roster here on the Nationals, I guess we can bring it back to the start of last season. Some of these guys don't have really many splits at all, but we do have some that do, Dan. And I don't think it would surprise you to know that they are striking out. That's why I liked Eichhoff a lot over Musgrove. Now, I didn't think Musgrove would get blown up. Don't get me wrong. I still had some Musgrove, but liked Eichhoff just for the strikeout upside. And he was getting strikeouts. So K-Booms has 27 plate appearances against righties. He's striking out 44% of the time. He's missed, and this makes sense. He's missing a lot of bats. He's missing the ball a lot. Right. You have him. He also is a guy that when he connects, he will hit for some power, but a lot of strikeouts here. And then Max Scherzer, we don't need to get into that. He's a pitcher. Victor Robles, in 135 plate appearances, 29% K rate. Who else do we have here? Just going through, because I think it's important if we're looking for...
Yeah, Dave, I think we just talked about what their lineup was on Sunday. Was Robles, Defoe, Wilmer Defoe batting
I just
second.
Read it off.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think you need to go into...
Well, only because... Here's why. Because Chassin's not very good.
Sure.
And Miller Park is scary. So I'm saying Robles at 29. Yan Gomes, if he's in the lineup, is at 28%. Michael A. Taylor, if he's in the lineup, 27. Stevenson, 26. Right? Matt Adams, 25. Dozier, 22.
Adams is on the shelf, too. Adams is on the IL net.
That's right. Yeah. The other day. That's right. So no Adams. So you take some strikeouts away, but you also take a lot of power away. I mean, yes, it's true. Kurt Suzuki, if he's there, isn't going to strike out a lot. And Adam Eaton isn't going to strike a lot.
Cleanup.
Right, exactly. And Howie Kendrick, maybe not. He won't either, but because he should be back in the lineup. But it's not a great lineup at all, and that's why they have a sub-4 implied total here right now. It sits at 3.9 at Miller Park. I'm not a big fan of Chassin. Don't get me wrong. But if you're asking, like, hey, are there cheap guys you like here? Well, there's him, and then there's one more that I've been talking about at length lately. I think I tweeted it about, let's see, I'll tell you. It was against the same Toronto team. So on the 15th of Toronto, before that game, I had mentioned that Martin Perez, the velocity was real. And this was the first game he was coming in as a starter and not as a reliever. He came in and he was hitting 96, 97, not sitting, but hitting 96, 97 in the 6th inning. Okay. So he maintained that velocity all the way through. And now on the season, you have a guy who obviously people had a lot of high hopes for, but they didn't pan out. He's now sitting more than 2 miles per hour above his career average on his fastball. And the other pitch, and when you look at the changeup and the cutter and the four-seamer, you take the whiff rates there. The cutter's at 15, changeup's at 12, the four-seamer's at 11.5. None of those are elite, but they are enough together in unison to actually make him pretty interesting. The fastball's still getting hit for a little bit of power, but Toronto is also a team that you can get some strikeouts here. And if he keeps throwing this hard, by the way, he is also throwing the cutter a lot more, which I found very interesting because it's getting good results. He wasn't throwing it at all before. Now he's throwing it 35% of the time this year, Dan, and his sinker usage is down 50%. Well, it was 50% before, 25% this year. Those are the things you want to see for a fantasy purpose as far as strikeouts go. And I think, if you're going to go cheap, you could do a lot worse than Perez. And I also believe that nobody thinks that this stuff might be real. I think people just assume he's getting lucky because if you don't actually look into it, you're just assuming, oh, he's as bad as he always was and he's had a couple lucky starts. I think he's somewhere in between.
I'm intrigued to see where ownership lands on some of these cheaper pitchers, but I think there's some upside options. Anybody else for you?
The problem is, do you want to pay up for pitching on this slate, or for pitching, or do you want to pay down? Right now, I'm leaning no, because there isn't a single team with an implied run total above 4.8. Right? Right now, Houston's at 4.8. The next is at 4.6. Not a lot of high run totals. You may really want to pay for pitch, especially in cash. I'd be paying for pitching. Now, I do think against John Means, the Boston Red Sox are going to have the highest total. It's probably going to be around 6, and there'll be a team to pay up for at Camden Yards. But aside from that, I don't see anything else being particularly high here on lines that on totals that we don't yet have. So do I think it's necessary to pay down? Probably not. But the Blue Jays are striking out a good amount against righties, and you could do worse than Perez. I would prefer him over Chassin, but I would prefer to see what we can do first before we go all the way down there.
All right, let's talk through quickly here, and we're going to do this against the pitchers that you see on DK price point wise, but that doesn't make a big difference. We're going to talk through which stacks and which offense we're most interested in. Don't forget, Dave has your write-up every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That is called the Deep Dive. That is available behind the paywall. To use that, you need to be a member of awesemo.com. To do that, you can use the promo code EARLYBIRD. One word gets you 50% off. And don't forget, you get free shows over there on YouTube. You get the almost said NBA, the MLB Strategy Show. That is every morning with Josh plus Dave I almost said Endor. Josh plus Adam or Dave. On Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's Adam. Then on Tuesday, Thursday, it's Dave. And you get EMAX sprinkled in there as well. Tons of content available to you on our YouTube channel and over at awesemo.com, including your projections, lineup builder, and now the Fantasy Cruncher is up and running. You'll want to check that out with FC Pro, which has some cool features from what I've come to understand. Dave, as we look at offense and look against the pitchers we want to stack against, clearly you have Josh Smith down here at the bottom end for Boston, but it's against Baltimore, so there's some potential downside there. You have Alcantara as a cheap pitcher, so do you go Cubs here? Martin Perez against the Blue Jays, Jake Junis against those aforementioned Houston Astros. What's your favorite stack or favorite couple of stacks that stand out to you before you write the deep dive on Monday?
Yeah, I mean, John Means does have a good changeup. I believe that he does, and we've seen it. It's a good pitch. But I was talking to Adam about this the other day on Slack before one of our shows. He said, where are you at on Means? Josh and I disagree, and Josh ended up in that start being right. Means got tuned up by the White Sox, but I was with Adam on that. I thought a guy like him against a heavy K team, against the White Sox, mind you, it was a really bad pitching slate, so willing to roll the dice on someone like him. But I specifically mentioned that as a two-pitch pitcher, I can see him getting into trouble against better teams. Against teams that are capable of hitting, teams that are capable of getting to guys that are very one or I guess two-dimensional in his case. And if you take a look at how this Boston Red Sox team hits his pitches, well, a few of them are going to make for really solid options. They're also much better than their record, their standings, and their overall ISO, WOBA, you name it, is this year. So just pulling it up now, if you look at how this team does against four-seamers, this should be obvious to everyone because, mind you, he's throwing it 50+% of the time, right? That is his first pitch. It's a setup pitch, you name it. Going back to the start of last season, you are going to get a ton of bats that are towards the top of the league. Mookie and JD Martinez were both top 3 last year against four-seamers. Let's see, Mookie, yeah, incredible. JD, really good. Incredible. Xander Bogaerts, really good. Benintendi, very good. So you have all of that. They also have the platoon advantage. Outside of Benintendi, you're going to get a lot of quality right-handed power bats in this lineup. And then guys like Benintendi and Betts and Martinez all can hit the changeup well, too. So Means probably doesn't escape this start with a heartbeat. And I think it's only I think it's only appropriate that right now we put Boston atop all of the stacks at Camden Yards and weather, just to make sure here, right now it looks like 70+ degrees here. No precipitation. So really hitter friendly.
I have to admit that may be the first time you ever said doesn't escape this game with a heartbeat. That's a solid line.
Thanks.
That is
I actually came up with that, but usually I say, because I use it a lot, I do use it a lot, maybe more in writing, I think, because I use it quite a bit.
I don't know that I've heard it before here.
But
so
I usually say with a pulse.
All right.
I
like it.
Yeah. They're linked.
Right. I think I do not hold a medical degree, but I would agree with you that they're
nice little one-liner though, right?
Anybody else? So you have Michaelis against the Philadelphia Phillies. You have Alcantara. Sorry, gonna get that right eventually.
Been doing great too.
The Cubs at 63. All these seem in play, right? These are all stacks or sort of 2-offs that are going to have viable options just simply because of the pitcher they're going against.
Yeah, no, they're all viable. It's funny though, the teams with the highest totals right now, like we said, Boston doesn't have a total yet. St. Louis against Velasquez, I guess, his homer problems have really been at Citizens Bank Park, even though he gets strikeouts at a higher clip there. I'm not interested in Velasquez, but I don't love St. Louis either. Toronto against Perez, I could see a stack going off just because we're not sure if this is 100% legit with Perez. I'm leaning towards he's still not ever going to be a great pitcher, but I do believe he's going to be a lot better than we've seen in the past, which makes this, average to slightly below average from a stack standpoint. Minnesota's at 4.5 against Stroman, but when healthy, Stroman's really good, man. The funny thing is he doesn't rely on getting strikeouts to prevent runs. He gets bad contact and a lot of ground balls, so not a concern there. Houston against Junis is a very fascinating matchup. As we know, Junis, when he is missing his spots, gives up a lot of power.
A lot.
Right. There's a type of guy that you will see 2-3 home run games. It'll happen at least once or twice this season, and he will give up some power, but he's also not a bad pitcher. Houston, I think you have to put up there as one of the top options. And aside from that, other teams, Dodgers against Gausman, that's interesting because he has a lot of blow-up potential, so I don't hate that. But really, where do you go here? Maybe Washington against Chessin, but I don't love it, especially with the amount of injuries and the amount of righties, particularly ones that don't have a lot of power. So we come down to the teams that don't have totals yet. Baltimore against Josh Smith. How many innings does he even throw? I have no idea, and it's Baltimore's offense. Blake Snell, so Arizona, no. Chicago against Alcantara, I guess it's fine, but temperatures and wind conditions aren't going to be great for hitting. And even if they were, Alcantara has been pretty all right. And then Ken Kelly, his name is Merrill Kelly. His first name is actually Kenneth, but we'll go by Merrill.
Are you guys good buddies or what?
Well, no, it's just
pulling out the Ken. I mean, all right.
Baseball reference.
Right.
Yeah, but he hasn't been bad at all. So again, unless you're going to Boston, which would probably be chalky and force pretty similar pitching combinations.
Right.
maybe it'll be smarter to pay up at pitching and just differentiate with some different hitters. I don't know if there's anyone other than Boston that's going to be super high owned in terms of stacks. Do you see anyone? Maybe Houston. Maybe Houston. But
I think it's Houston and Boston. Yeah, I think Boston 1, Houston 2. I wonder if Minnesota is the stack I go to here against Stroman. I'm a huge Marcus Stroman fan from a personal perspective. I love him on Twitter. I love watching him pitch. But I also don't think his actual results this year have been in line with who he is as a pitcher. So I would not be surprised if the lefty bats from Minnesota get to him here, the Keplers and the Rosarios and some of these power guys for Minnesota. So that would probably be a lower owned stack option that stands out to me. And again, I love watching him pitch. I love the swagger. I love the way he goes about playing baseball, but I just think this is his results to start the year have been off-putting. I'd also, obviously Martin Perez is somebody that I'll stack against when I have the opportunity with Toronto bats, but I think you nailed it. I think it's Boston, Houston, and then maybe one-offs or two-offs as you try to figure out your lineup construction. Any final thoughts on this slate? Dave does have your write-up over there at awesemo.com. Again, you need to be a member, so use that promo code EarlyBird. Dave, any final thoughts for you before we sign off?
I think that's it, man. We've covered most of it. Check out the deep dive. I'll be posting it in the afternoon. Check out the deeper dive. It'll be on at 5 p.m. Eastern. And check out Awesemo Radio from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Fantasy Saturday and Sunday. By the way, you got to come on to talk some seasonal baseball.
Yeah, you know where to find me. You can also find me over on Twitter at Dan Strafford. But more importantly, you can find Dave at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. You can find Awesemo at Awesemo_com. And as Dave said, find the deep dive at awesemo.com. You need to be a member. So sign up today and find out what all the fuss is about. Projections, lineup builder, Fantasy Cruncher Plus is an add-on. So you have all that. Sorry, Fantasy Cruncher Pro is a add-on as well. So you have all that and more. And if you are listening still, send Ship My Money DFS DM telling him he needs to get a new modem. With that said, wish you guys all the best of luck on Monday's slate. You get EMAC, you get Adam on Tuesday right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com.